I've got to stop promising this shit. Now this may sound weird, but I really like the Su-39. Despite that people say it's one of the worst premiums of the game, due to it being the hellish BR of 11.3 whilst remaining a subsonic attacker and more importantly, overpriced. I'm not saying it isn't. Now this video isn't exactly intended to turn you into a Su-39 truther, or as any form of advice to buy this thing, since if you want to use it to its fullest capacity, you have to get used to a lot of its quirks and its loadout, and play the game mode no War Thunder content creator talks about. Simulator battles. This video is here to hopefully give pre-existing Su-39 owners, however few you are, a new outlook on how to use this plane. And if you tried a few games with it in ARB, then just give up. And if you are someone who, despite everyone else telling you not to get this plane, still want to get it, then I hope this video may help you. Now, unlike most reviews of planes that I or many other content creators will do on this game, this one will be a bit more sim-centric. Anyway, let's get into the video. Now I'm sure it's become apparent that the Su-39 is obviously an upgraded Su-25, and flying it is not much different compared to the other variants. That being, it flies like a wet bag of shit. It absolutely pisses away speed in the turns, and if you're carrying quite a large load, and try and pull some high AOA maneuvers, you'll sometimes find that it starts to try and wing over, and so sometimes you have to be a bit careful when piloting the Su-39. And much like planes in a similar class like the A6E, it will shear off your wings if you even think about pitching down. Now on the sim control side of things, it can be pretty relaxing to fly when given a deft touch. And like the other Su-25s, it has automatic levelling, which actually does something on this plane. But for whatever reason, the damping doesn't do as much, and my trim is still in effect in this mode, unlike most planes. The engines are actually quite an improvement, with them being able to hit 104% thrust for short bursts of time, about 1.5 to 2 minutes long without damaging the engines, which is great for takeoffs and dogfights. When cruising, I tend to have it around 60 to 80%, as it will still accelerate and maintain the plane's optimum speed of 700 to 800 km an hour. Another reason I keep it at this is because in sim my throttle lever naturally creeps upward a few percent, and so if it's kept at 100% it will creep past the red line and accidentally break my engines. Now this here is the meat and two veg when it comes to this plane. Like the original Su-25, it has the same 30mm gun. However, like the Su-25T, it has moved from the original concealed mount at the front to on the other side of the cockpit and behind the pilot. I frankly have no clue why this is, but avionics wise it shares the same rear IRCM as the Su-25T, making it harder for IR systems such as missiles and IRST to gain and maintain a lot. It also has the same SPO L150 RWR as the Su-25T and the MiG-29 SMT, being the only Russian RWR in the game that can show precise angles instead of the 10 fixed angles on the SPO-15 found on most other Russian top tier aircraft. Also like the Su-25T, the Su-39 has the Mercury targeting pod for night vision. However, this plane's primary difference is the option to replace this targeting pod with a radar, the Kopio-25. This is, as far as I know, the only plane radar in the game with a GTM mode, allowing it to lock and use TWS against moving ground vehicles. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a really fucking good radar. Much like the other top tier Russian radars, you're in pulse Doppler only, and have varying choices of all aspect pulse Doppler and TWS, or head-on pulse Doppler and TWS, in the order of PD, TWS, PD HDN, TWS HDN, GTM, and GTM TWS. In my opinion, I prefer this radar over the base MiG-29 due to the choice of angles and ranges I can use, along with actually being able to slew the radar dish. Its only real downfall is its max positive angle. This is because obviously the module is mounted at the bottom of the plane at the midpoint of the fuselage, and so the plane's body blocks most of the area above the aircraft, only being able to look 10 degrees upward. You also have a choice of 10, 20, 30 and 100 km ranges. When I'm normally flying in sim, I usually have my radar set to 100 km range, and the mode set to TWS with a 40 degree area. Now in this mode, the all aspect TWS has an effective range of about 40 to 60 kilometers. I usually use this mode for general cruising and bombing, so I can see everything no matter what direction they are going. But if I'm attacking another aircraft, I typically have it on the head-on TWS mode. There are multiple reasons for this. One being that head-on has a much longer range than all aspect, and more importantly, it's much quicker at scanning new targets, as all aspect typically takes a couple whole sweeps of the radar to get an azimuth, whereas head-on shows on the first few sweeps. And it doesn't matter a huge amount, as most of my engagements are typically head-on. The only real downside to this, I think, is head-on is easier to notch than all aspect, and has a minimum range before it can lock onto aircraft, shown by this box here at the bottom of the radar. I will touch on why this doesn't matter all too much later on, but first we must continue on to the suspended armament. The Su-39 has a wide array of armament to choose from. I think it may be the largest selection in the game, with a whopping 11 pylons. The outer pylons can only fit R6TMs, with the first pylon in being able to be fitted with either rockets or bombs, or my preferred munition, the R-73, which on this plane, my god is it great. Now due to the plane being subsonic, you may sacrifice some range, however being slower allows the missile to make more intense turns. Not like you'll be able to take advantage of this too much since this plane unfortunately lacks HMD, so you cannot slave the missile to your view. The next pylon again can be fitted with more bombs and rockets, or instead have the KH-25 variants. My preferred variant is the KH-25ML, which is the laser guided version. And for a laser guided ATGM, for some reason it has a really aggressive lead path when boosting towards target, so you can pot them pretty gnarly shots because it can lead quite a bit. Don't quote me on this, but I believe it's got roughly a 10G pull. If anyone knows what that means, please put down in the comments below. Its only downside being that it's got an impact fuse. On the next pylon you have yet again bombs and rockets, and yet again the choice of KH-25 ATGMs, but for this pylon they aren't the main attraction. This pylon can also house a whopping 8 Vickers ATGMs per pylon. You may be familiar with these from the KA-50 and the KA-52. They would be great ATGMs if they didn't also have a proxy fuse fitted, making them very capable at air-to-air. Now these don't have quite as much of a reputation they used to have, as when the Su-39 was released in La Royale. In their same update they nerfed the Vickers, reducing its ability to track the laser as well, since before it was able to easily track manoeuvring fellow subsonic attackers, and many have since dismissed the missile's use as an air-to-air missile. But not me. No, I persevered, and as you will see throughout the video, I have used them to great effect. In just a moment I'll give you a quick tutorial on my tactic for using these ATGMs as air-to-air missiles. Anyway, the next pylon is yet again more bombs and rockets, but this time you also have the option of the KAB-500, which is a Russian TV guided bomb. You also have an ATGM on this pylon, but instead of the KH-25 series, you instead have the KH-29. These missiles are bigger and badder than the KH-25s, with an eye-wateringly high explosiveness and even more range. I have been able to get a kill with these in air-to-air, however it has only just been the one, and it was on a head-on target that wasn't really moving all that much. The issue with this missile, since it's so bloody heavy, once its main booster is gone and it's running on the sustainer, if it does any form of large maneuver, it just loses all its speed instantly. And at last we have here in the middle pylon is where the Kopio and the Mercury pods are mounted. And of course all the choices of pylons on the other side are mirrored. You also can add drop tanks onto those inner two pylons, but on this plane it's completely unnecessary. My typical loadout uses 2 R60Ms, 2 R73s, 4 Fab 500s, exactly enough to kill one base and sim, 16 Vickers and the Kopio 25. Before the R73s were added, I instead had one set of 5 500s on the outer pylons, and had the KH-29L for some extra air-to-air capability. Now I'll briefly show you on how I use this plane for taking down enemy planes. First up, as I mentioned earlier, I use one of the modes of TWS for tracking my target before attacking. I track them until I get within range that I can get a contrast lock. This will be anywhere from 8 to 13 kilometers depending on how the render distance is feeling on that day. It should also be noted that your camera will save to your radar, including your TWS mode, so any contrast lock will be broken instantly when TWS takes control again. To stop this, just change to your next radar mode that isn't TWS. If you wish to copy my radar lines, they'll be on screen now. Yes, I know they're horrible. Now that you are out of TWS, you can lock into the aircraft. Just get a simple tracking lock and not a leading lock, as while in theory this can be better for leading targets, it often results in you over leading and missing your target. Once you have a good lock, you ideally want to be in a head-on or within 2 to 4 kilometers if they're moving away. Either way, it's preferable for your azimuths to be in parallel with one another and not going sideways or heavily maneuvering, as in this case it would be just easier to use your R73s and R60Ms. The Vickers has a max range of 10 kilometers before self-detonation, but in head-ons it doesn't matter as much, as for example if you launch at 13 kilometers, by the time the Vickers connects with the target, the Vickers may have only travelled 8 kilometers. And as for if the enemy fires back, I find it more often that if it's a radar missile such as a Sparrow, despite it having a higher max speed, if you launch first, your Vickers will typically get to them first, as I feel like the Vickers tends to be a lot faster off the rail than the Sparrow. I've also sometimes found that the Vickers can even kill the enemy's missile first if it happens to get in the way. I guess if you want to use this missile for its intended way, or whatever, that means I can show you how GTM works. First, select the radar mode. You'll notice there's a very large vertical search area compared to the other modes. As mentioned earlier, this mode only works on moving vehicles. Stationary vehicles and ground targets will not be picked up on the radar. I typically use TWS to select my target, then lock and fire. Once destroyed, you can always unlock and switch to the next target. This can be done without having to use the camera, but it's always good to double check that the radar is pointed at a good spot on the vehicle. You can of course change this by altering the relative lead by pressing the camera lock button again. Now, what exactly do I think about this plane? Me personally, I love flying it, with a heavy asterisk on that. I love flying it in sim. Is it because most of the players in sim are pretty shit at it and make for easy head-on kills? Probably, but you may have heard in the background of this video that practically every kill I got on this plane, I was laughing my ass off like a madman. And if it wasn't for this plane, I probably wouldn't have gotten into sim as much as I have. Sure, I played some sim every now and then in the MiG-23ML, but it felt more grindy and more seal clubbing, considering the plane's performance at its BR, whereas killing planes with the Vickers and KH series feels so rewarding and hilarious to me. And if you want to have some great fun in sim and you really have too much money, then sure, you can buy it. Just wait until a good BR rotation comes around so you can play in sim. Its only good bracket is in the 10-7 and 11-3 bracket, as otherwise you're going to get F-16s and F-14s in your games and that's just not going to be fun.
Mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't bread over every egg.
Yeah, sorry, Guy decided to suddenly drop the air superiority update today whilst I'm doing voiceover for this. I was judging it would change this video in any way, but it turns out it didn't. In fact, it's nothing but positives for the Su-39. It's been given the KH-29TE, which I'm assuming is somewhat similar to the KH-29TD on the MiG-29 SMT, but from what it says in game, it just has slightly shorter range. Come to think of it, I didn't mention any of the TV guided variants of the KH missiles. They're great for fire and forget on ground targets. In game, it says that they're 30 kilometers, but you shouldn't always take their word for that. I haven't tested any of the TV guided missiles for air-to-air, but I wouldn't have much hope for it. And just one more thing before the video actually ends. Now, I know every YouTuber on the planet talks about this funny little statistic, but I mean, come on. We could do better. Not to mean I don't take lightly the number of subs and views the Draken video got me, but I assure you, I'm very, very grateful that many of you decided to subscribe to my channel. So anyway, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, and leave a comment if there's any inaccuracies, criticism, or any other general comments, be it requests for the next plane you want me to review, and I imagine... I know this video may have quite a few people telling me I'm talking absolute shit, because like any of the community, the War Thunder community has quite a few people who are a wee bit toxic and don't like other people having fun unless they're exclusively using meta vehicles. And on that note, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Give me like 2 to 6 months judging by the last few videos. See ya! Also, like the Su-25T, the Su-39 has the... There's a lot of fucking saying Su, and it's just tripping me up. Also, like the Su-25T, the Su-30... Fuck me.